Okay, hi everyone. Hi. All right, so we're going to be talking about customizing your notifications for iOS 12. So a bit about me. My name is Kaya Thomas. I currently work at Slack, and I work on the messaging team focused on notifications and accessibility. Previously, I spent some time at Apple working on accessibility, and at Intuit working on the Mint app. And I also have my own app called We Read Too, which is a directory of children's and young adult books written by authors of color. Okay, so let's get to what we're going to be talking about today. First, I'm going to do a brief overview of notifications, the different types, and the features that are currently available before iOS 12. Then I'll be going over a demo app which we'll be using to add iOS 12 features to. And then the various iOS 12 features that we have: authorization options, group notifications, dynamic category actions, and user interaction within a notification. Let's start out with the overview. There are two types of notifications: remote push notifications and local notifications. Remote push notifications require you to have a server that sends a JSON payload to Apple's push notification service. In order for Apple to send that payload for the notification on the device, you need a certificate, a push notification certificate, and you need a device token. For the purpose of this talk and the demo, we're going to be more focused on local notifications because they're really easy to create and register directly from the app itself. So let's go over this example from Apple on how to actually schedule and create a local notification. First, of course, we need the content of the notification. And in order to get the content, you create a UN Mutable Notification Content object. And you can set a title and a body, which will then show on the notification. In this case, this is a notification for a staff meeting. Now, since it's every Tuesday, we want to trigger it using a calendar trigger. And in order to do that, you need to use date components, and then set which weekday and which hour you want it to be triggered. There are several ways to actually trigger notifications. So you can do it on a calendar basis, or you can do it on a time interval. So you can say, I want it to trigger 5 seconds from now, 5 minutes from now, and you can also set it to repeat. So here we're using the UN calendar notification trigger, and we're setting it to repeat so that it repeats every Tuesday. To actually send a notification, you need to create a request. And in this case, the identifier for the request should just be some type of unique string. So I'm just using a user ID string. And then we add our trigger and the content that we set before. To actually schedule it, you need to get the current UN User Notification Center and then add that request. And then there's a completion handler in which you can handle any errors that may occur. Now, in iOS 10, Apple announced 2 extensions, which are separate targets that you can add to your app in order to customize notifications a bit more. There's a notification service extension, which if you add to your app, will get triggered if your payload has mutable content set to 1. And in the service extension, you can do a lot of powerful things. For example, in your payload, if you have any encrypted data, you can then use the service extension to decrypt that data so that it's decrypted by the time it gets to the device. If you also have any large attachments in your notification, for example, images, videos, audio, you can then download those attachments and store them temporarily. And then in general, if there's any content that you want to just modify, you can do that. And this allows you to basically just modify anything before it actually gets to the device. For the purpose of this talk, we'll be focusing more on the content notification content extension, which allows you to customize UI. This was also announced in iOS 12. The content extension is a separate target from your app, which contains a view controller that allows you to customize the look of the notification. So in this example, you see Lyft has added the look of the car, the license plate number, a picture of the driver, and allow you to easily call, notify the driver that you're there directly from a notification. And rich notifications are really powerful because they give the user the option to get value from the notification and also take action, right, without having to go directly into your app. So now that we've done a brief overview of the features that are already available, let's look at our demo app. It's very simple, just has one button, and this button triggers a local notification that notifies you of a new episode of the Startup Podcast. And you can see here we're using the content extension to show the logo of the podcast, and the title is just letting you know you have a new episode of the podcast and the episode name. And then from that notification, you can like, play, or cue next, right? And we want to take this to the next level with iOS 12. So what's actually new in iOS 12? Let's start out with authorization options. Authorization options are what you set when you actually request permissions for the notification. And now, with iOS 12, Apple is allowing users to manage their notification settings directly from a notification. This means there's a couple of things as developers we're going to have to do to prepare for that. One thing is related to the Deliver Quietly feature. Apple is now allowing notifications to be delivered quietly, which means that they do not show as banners to the user. They'll just show up in the notification center. Now, this may seem scary, but in some cases, for some apps, you may not need a banner to be shown directly to the user. You might just want your notification in the notification center. And you can do that with provisional authorization. Now, the great thing about provisional authorization is you actually don't have to request permission from the user to send those notifications. What this means is, instead of when the user opens your app and they get the alert that asks them to allow notifications to be sent, that alert will never show to them. If you set provisional authorization, which I'll show you how, those notifications will directly be sent to their notification center. And also, you're allowed to have badges on your application. But it won't show as banners, so you only want to set this if you do not mind that your notifications won't show as banners. So how do we do that? So here in our definition launching method in our app delegate, when we're requesting authorization, in the array in which we're requesting the types of authorization we want to have, we just set provisional. And this automatically lets Apple know that you want your notifications to deliver quietly, and the user will not be notified with an alert to allow those notification permissions. So that one's pretty simple. Now the next option is related to app notification settings. So now that users can manage their settings directly from a notification, that means they can turn off notifications directly from that notification. So they can turn off all notifications for your app from one notification. Now that's pretty alarming. Now in order to prevent that user from maybe turning off all notifications, if you have some type of custom notification setting, Apple is allowing you to provide a deep link directly to your custom notification settings page, right? So here you can see there's two ways to get there. One is from the notification. If I select turn off, if I have this deep link set, it will allow me to configure in the app. And the other is from the system-wide settings app. So if I go to settings and then notifications and select your app, if I scroll down, I'll see that you may have custom settings for that app. Now how do we do this? Very similar to provisional, you want to set provides app notification settings in your request authorization method. This lets Apple know that you have some type of custom settings that you're going to deep link to. But the most important part is that you handle the callback method. And this callback method, open settings for notification, will be wherever you have the protocol for the UN Notification Center delegate. Usually that's your app delegate, right? So in this case, we have this function in our app delegate. And in this case, the first thing you want to do is check the user info dictionary. Now the user info dictionary is related to your notification payload, right? So if the user is managing their notification settings from the payload itself, the user info dictionary could contain valuable information that you want to use to create a deep link. But you also have to realize they can also be coming to your notification settings from the system-wide settings app, which would mean that user info dictionary would be nil. right? So you have to account for that. There's two different ways that you can be getting to this callback. So you have to be able to create a deep link, whether or not that user info dictionary coming from the UN notification is nil or not. And then, of course, you want to route the user to your customized settings view. Okay, so those are authorization options. Now we're going to get more into some of the cooler features that are coming to iOS 12. First, we have group notifications. I'm personally really excited about group notifications because they're going to make the notification center look much cleaner. So instead of scrolling endlessly throughout your notification center, if you have 10 notifications from one app, they will be grouped together. Now, that grouping can be determined two ways. It can be determined by the developer. So we're going to go over how to actually customize these stacks. Or the user can actually set that setting, that they want the grouping to be by app only. So as a developer, you have to realize that even if you customize this grouping, the user might potentially just ignore that and set it to go by app, right? So how do we actually customize these stacks? We use the thread identifier. I'm going to show you how to do it in the payload and the local notification. It's pretty simple. The thread identifier just needs to be a string that relates to all of the notifications you want stacked together. So for our demo app, we want all of the notifications for one particular podcast grouped together. So if there's 5 podcasts, there will be 5 stacks, right? So all of the new episodes, the notifications for the new episodes will be grouped together, right? So here, on the notification content, we're setting the thread identifier to just be the podcast name lowercase. And if you do this, your stacks will be grouped by whatever you set that. Now, how do you do it in the payload? So for your backend engineers, when they're actually setting these JSON payloads, it's essential that they put the thread ID in the APS key. So you see here, we have our APS key, and you want to make sure that you have that there, because, and it's different from the content. The content is spelled out thread identifier, but in the payload, it's just thread ID, right? If you set this, it'll also respect the grouping there. But there's even more customization you can do with these stacks. There's a thing called summary. So you see in the stacks, you usually would see 2 more notifications. So for anyone who has the beta downloaded on their phone or test device, in these stacks, you usually see something like 2 more notifications or 3 more notifications. But you can actually customize that text. So you can customize the more part, and you can also add a formatter to give more information. So in this case, I've customized it to say, more episodes of startup, right? And the startup part is the formatting that we're going to go over. So to do this is the formatter that I've used. Now, the formatter for the int you see at the beginning will actually be set by Apple. So you don't have to set that, but you are allowed to customize that for any reason that you may have for the numbering of your notifications. If it's somehow different, you can customize that. But Apple will fill in that formatter for you. Now, the string formatter that I've added, now I have to actually make sure that when the notification is set, either in the payload or in the content notification, that I provide a summary argument to match that. Now, where do we actually set this format? So this format for hidden previews is actually something that's been available since iOS 11. Now, most people, if you've noticed, if you turn previews off, don't actually customize this. So usually it will just say notification. But you actually have the ability to customize this, and when notification stacks, it's going to be even more essential that you make sure you provide a formatter if the notification content is hidden. Even though the user may want to have privacy, which is important, you can still provide them with context without giving all of the content, right? So in this case, I'm letting them know that they have 3 new podcast episodes available without actually telling them what the podcast episodes are or what the podcast is, to make sure that I'm respecting the privacy of their preview setting. Both of these are set when you register your notification categories. Now, notification categories are basically like a template for your notification, right? So in this case, we only have one type of notification, which is our podcast notification. We have our identifier podcast, which is going to be really important later. Here is where we're setting both of those formats that I showed before, and we're adding them in the parameters for the init method for the notification category. And this is happening all in our user delegate did finish launching as well. So we get our current notification center and we set the notification category. When I'm actually sending the notification, so in this case it's a local notification, but it'll also be done in the payload, right? If it's a remote notification, you see I'm setting the content summary argument, right? And that's how I actually get 2 more episodes of starting up, right? So I have to provide that for each notification. Okay, so that's group notification. There's a lot of customizing you can do there, and if it's something that's right for your app, I think you should definitely have it when iOS 12 comes out. Otherwise, all of your stacks will be in one stack for the entire app. Now let's get a bit into the content extension. For those of you who are not using the content extension, I'm going to go over how to actually add it to your app. First, in Xcode, you just want to set a new target and select notification content extension. It'll ask you to activate the scheme, and you would say yes. Then you want to go into the plist file. Now this part is actually really important. So first, in iOS 12, as we're going to go over later, we can have user interaction within a notification. But in order to take advantage of this, you have to set this Boolean to true. Next, we have default content hidden. And I'll show you why it's really important to have that hidden. And lastly, we have our extension categories, which is podcast. And this can also be an array if you have multiple types of notification categories. And when you set this, this lets Apple know that any notification that comes in with that category identifier, it should be rerouted to the content extension if the user drags down on the notification or 3D touches it. So getting to that hidden content attribute, the reason why you want to set that to true is because if you don't, when the user actually force touches or drags down on the notification, the default notification view will still be shown. So you don't want that to show, right? You just want your custom view to show. So that's why it's essential to set that to yes. And similarly, you have to set your extension categories to match our previous category, right? So those strings have to match. Whatever you set as the identifier in your US notification category initializer has to match what you want routed to the content extension. Now here, you notice something different. We have 2 actions that we're adding to our notification category, right? So now we're adding to the template. We want a play action and a queue action. And to create these actions is pretty simple. You just need to really give it a title. And we can handle the responses later. So this is actually what we want to do. We want, when the user presses play, it to switch to pause. And when they hit add to queue, it selects to remove from queue. To actually do this and make it dynamic is much simpler than you may think. In this did receive response method, in our notification content extension, we just have to switch out whichever new actions we want when an action is selected. So in this case, we have the identifier, which is play action. Now in this demo, we're hard coding a lot of strings, we're using these if statements, but in a production-ready app, most likely these wouldn't be hard coded, and there would be much more efficient ways to do this. But in this case, for the demo app, we're just checking if it was a play action selected, and then we're going to create the pause action, right, and replace it where the play action was. And then we just need to set new actions on the extension context. Now you notice here we're handling this completion handler. The completion handler is really important. There are 3 ways to handle the actual response. So you can not dismiss it, which means that the content extension will stay active. even if they click on a response. You can dismiss it, which means if they click on that response, the content extension will exit out. And then you can dismiss and forward. And that means your main app will be triggered, and it will trigger the did receive response method in your main app, wherever you're handling the UI notification center delegate, usually the app delegate. So in this case, we want it to stay up because we want them to see that the actions are switching. So that's how you do dynamic actions. As you can see, there's not a lot of work that you can do. In a production-ready app, most likely you want to store that information. So if they're clicking on your notification, you can store it in user defaults or in the keychain, depending on the privacy settings. Now let's get to user interaction with the notification. This is a pretty big deal. Before, Apple has kept notifications like a glass box. There's nothing you can do within the notification itself. But now, with iOS 12, they're allowing our view controller from the content extension to handle user interaction. So in this case, for our demo app, we used to have a like action. But why have a like action when now we can have a like button? So now I've created a heart button on the notification, which the user can select to like and unlike. And as with any view controller, there are really endless possibilities here. So how I did this, the view itself was just set up in the storyboard within the content extension. So what I'm doing in the view did load is just adding a target, and then when that target is selected, I'm just reversing and deselecting or selecting that button. So I'm not doing anything really complex for the demo app, it's really just for the aesthetics. But in a production app, you probably want to store that information, right? And then so that you can access it when the main app is loaded. So let's summarize all of that. There's a lot there, right? First, we have the authorization options. So if you don't mind your notifications being delivered quietly, you probably want to set provisional authorization on your notifications. That way, you don't have to request permission from the user. And if you have any custom notification settings, you want to make sure that you have a deep link directly from the notification and implement that callback so that when the user selects it, they're able to go to your custom settings. Then for group notifications, if you think that it's right for your apps to have different stacks, you want to make sure you add the thread identifier on your payload or your local notification. And also, when registering those categories, have a category summary and a hidden previous placeholder so that your user has more context on what the notifications actually are. Lastly, if you think dynamic actions would be great for your user and would provide them with more value, then implement them in the content extension. And handle any actions in the did receive response method. And of course, with user interactions, you can do anything. Have the targets or ID actions set up in your view controller or your storyboard, and handle any cool actions that you think would be valuable to your users there. If you're interested in checking out the demo app and playing around in Xcode 10, you can go to my GitHub and access it there, fork it, do whatever you'd like. You can reach me on Twitter or on my website. Thank you so much for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
Talking about more notifications in the example, you had 3 more episodes of podcasts.
Yep.
Can you make it conditional so that if there's just one more, you say, okay, if there's a singular.
Yes. So when the formatter for the int, right, Apple allows you to access that number if you want to, if you need to change it or anything, so you can make it conditional in that case.
Does your content extension have any time limits or any resource limits for how it prepares before displays?
So the notification service has time limits. So there is a timeout on the notification service, and usually in the notification service is where you're downloading the images that you're then going to use in your content extension, right? So you would temporarily store those on device and then access them in the content extension. When the notification service times out, though, there is a timeout method in there in which you can handle anything really last minute everything didn't finish. So.
Great talk. Just a question. What's the use case to deliver quietly to the investigation center? Like, what would be a use case?
What's the use case?
Yeah.
So to deliver quietly, for example, right? I mean, this is based on my own opinion, but let's say you have a news application and you're getting a lot of alerts for like articles, let's say that are not like emergency broadcasts or breaking news or something like that, right? In that case, it's probably fine if those go in the notification center without showing as an actual banner to the user. Right, so that's a use case, in my opinion, that I think would be really great, because then when they go to the notification center, they can see the notification, but then they didn't have to be bothered with it, right? Because I mean, we all, I'm sure, get notifications sometime that don't necessarily seem like they need to be a banner.
So when you're referring to the banner, you're saying that the app is foregrounded and the users hear your app, then you want to show
The app is backgrounded, right? Yeah, the app is backgrounded, or you're using another app, and you get that banner alert. Right? So basically, deliver quietly would not show that banner alert, but you would still see the notification when you swipe down to bring up the notification center.
The notification extension,
Mm-hmm.
you can modify your notification, and it also cancels delivery. So it's not delivered at all.
The notification service extension.
Yeah.
So that's a great question. No, you can't prevent a notification from being sent from the notification service extension. You can just modify it. So it's basically just like a step before it gets delivered, but you can't prevent it from being sent. Once it's already been scheduled, either from the local notification or remote, it will be sent, unless Apple throttles it for some reason. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Oh, I did have one other question. With the local notification, you set an identifier.
Mm-hmm.
Can you use that identifier to modify the notification? For example, the time changes or something?
So the identifier, like you mean in the service extension or just in the main app? Or?